edition of Everything Home. I'm your host, Brian Domingo. Today on our show, we're going to show you how to do a sheetrock repair in your house. Now, this method that we're going to show you works great on holes of about 2 inches in diameter or larger. We're going to show you on one video 2 different ways to do the repair, because depending on the location and the strength that you need behind the repair will determine on what type of repair you want to do and what materials you're going to use. The first one we're going to show you is using a drywall patch, and then we're also going to show you how to do the same repair, cutting out the sheetrock and putting in a new piece of sheetrock. And the reason we're doing both on one video is the finishing portion of it is the same. It's just going to determine what materials you use on where the hole is located. And we'll go into that in a little bit more detail as we're doing the repair, and then you can determine on which one is going to work best for your situation. Let's go get started on this. Okay, so we're going to be repairing this hole that was caused actually from a door slamming into it. Now, this was repaired once before, but they actually just put in some putty and filled it in and it broke right back out. Now, we're going to show you a couple different ways to repair this. The first way is we're going to use one of these wallboard patches on it. What you're going to want to do is open that up, and basically it's a patch like this that's just going to cover over the hole. Now, we're going to show you how you apply this. Basically, you take off the back, apply it to the wall, just like that, and then we're going to finish over that and then match the texture on this. Now, I don't recommend using this type of repair for a hole that's behind a door or a hole that you actually need strength, because these are kind of flexible. So if we do all the repair on this and the door slams into this again, it's probably going to crack the repair and it'll be noticeable again. So we're going to show you on a repair like this another way to do it that's actually going to be stronger. Now, these are great to use if you've got a small hole somewhere where you're not going to be hanging a picture or you don't need the strength. But behind a door, this is going to be a little bit flimsy, especially if the hole's a little larger. So now we're going to show you how. We're going to take this one off, and then we're going to show you how to do a repair with cutting out the sheetrock and putting in a new piece and repairing it from there. Okay, for the preferred method on a hole like this behind a door, we're going to actually cut out the sheetrock and replace and put in a new piece of sheetrock. It'll give it a lot more strength so that it's not going to puncture through. The first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to reach in the hole and we're going to feel on either side and see if we have a stud that's close by. Because if we had a stud that was running, say, right down here, we're going to want to cut this out and use half of that stud for backing. But because we don't have a stud close by and our nearest stud is way over here, which the other one's about 16 inches apart, which is going to put it over here, we're not going to do that. We're just going to cut out this hole here. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to measure and see that I could probably get away. We'll just do a 5-inch by 5-inch hole for it. So we're going to go cut out a square piece of sheetrock first at 5 inches by 5 inches. Okay, now we've cut out a piece of sheetrock that we're going to use to replace where the hole is. I like to mark on it the top, because if you're not perfectly square, you don't want to make your cuts like this and then actually not have it marked and try to put it in like this. It's not going to fit as well. So mark the top of it, and then what you want to do is you want to place this over the hole, and then we're going to take a pencil and we're going to mark out where we're going to cut out. Now, it's easier to do it this way, to actually cut the piece first and then mark it and cut out the hole, than it is to try to cut out this hole and then cut another piece to match it exactly. So once we're done with that, we're going to want to get our keyhole saw. We're going to take our keyhole saw then and we're going to cut out this hole. Now, if you don't have a keyhole saw, you can use another saw. That might work. These are just the easiest ones to use, but I've used hacksaw blades sometimes and just held them in my hands. They take a lot longer to cut. take that out. And then you're going to want to take your piece and kind of make sure that it's going to fit in there. Just kind of set it in like this, and you've got enough room for it to go in there. You don't want to put it all the way in because you don't want it to fall into the wall. Now we're going to show you how to do some backing behind this that will attach this piece too. Okay, now that we have the hole cut out, we cut a couple of pieces of backing, and we use some 1x3. You can use whatever you've got lying around the house. You can cut. You can use it up to a 2x4 if you wanted to. These are just easier to get in the hole. You could use some plywood if you have some plywood. I would always use something that's about 1 inch to 3/4 of an inch thick at least. Now that we've got that, what we're going to do is we're going to slide that in the hole. And we made them about 7 inches long, so they're about 1 inch long on either way. So we're going to put that into the hole, split the difference, and then we're going to put a couple screws into it to hold it into place. We're going to put them on these ends like this for now. Now that we have those 2 screws in, we're going to put a couple screws in along the side here. You want to countersink them into the sheetrock a little ways because you don't want them to be flush or sticking out. Otherwise, when you go to finish it, they'll be protruding through it. We've got that side done. We're going to put the other one on this side. Put that in the hole, split the difference. We'll put a couple screws down this side. That'll be the backing that's going to hold the new piece. So then what you're going to do is you're going to take the new piece and fit it right inside the hole like that. And then you're going to screw that one in with a couple screws too. You'll want to countersink it into those two. And one more screw. And you can see with this is going to have a lot more strength to it than the other type of patch. That's why we recommend doing this on somewhere where you're going to need something that might get pushed against it again. Now what I also like to do before we actually put the tape on, and you can use 2 different types of tape. There's a paper tape that you can use, which is a lot less expensive, and that goes on after you put some mud on, or you can use a mesh tape such as this. We're going to use a mesh tape on this, and what I like to do sometimes is take a scraper and scrape down the old finish a little bit, so that when the tape goes on, it sits a little flusher down in without the old finish, so then it's not going to be out and it's not going to be as noticeable. So we're going to take a scraper real quick, and we're just going to scrape a little bit of the old finish off, or you could use a sander and take off some of the old finish, the knockdown finish. Now if it's a flat wall, you're not going to be able to do this, but with a knockdown finish like this, we're going to scrape off a little bit so that the tape sits a little bit more flush with the wall. Okay, now that we've got that scraped down a little bit, we're going to put the mesh tape on, and basically we're just going to go around the seams. Okay, from this point on, it doesn't matter whether we used one of these type of patches or this type of patch and taped it ourselves. for the strength. The finishing portion from this point on is going to be the same. So now that we've mixed up our mud, and there's a lot of different types of muds you can use. They have topping mud, they have taping mud, but you want to use one that does both topping and taping. There's a little bit different consistency in them, but they have one that's kind of blended that'll work for both. Now I add a little bit of water in mine because it's a premix. I like to get it to the point of kind of a little bit creamier than a creamy peanut butter. So it's a little bit softer than that. So now we're going to put our first coat on. We're just going to fill it in, and this is just a first coat. I just use my smaller one like that, and then I'm just going to go over and float over it with a little bit larger trowel. Once we've done that, we're going to let that dry, and then we'll be putting a second coat on a little bit later. Okay, now that the first coat is dried, we're ready for the second coat. So we're just going to kind of take and scrape it a little bit to get off any high pieces first. Then once you've done that, put on a second coat of mud. And it's better to do several thin coats than to try to put it on real thick all at once. We're going to go out a little bit farther this time than we did the last time because we want to be able to blend in our wall. Okay, we're done with that coat. We're going to wait for that coat to dry, and then pretty much all we're going to have to do is sand it, and then we'll texture it after that. Okay, now that our second coat is nice and dry, like I said, just do real thin coats. So if it takes 3 coats to build it up, then that's fine. It'll dry better and won't crack, so the thinner the coats, the better. But we're able to do it in 2 coats. So now we're going to sand it and feather out all these edges so that we can get ready to texture it. There we go. Now it's nice and sanded down. We've really feathered it out on the edges here, and we're ready to texture it. And we're done sanding it. What I like to do is I take a moist sponge before I texture it, and I get off some of that powder residue, and I go around the edges, and that helps feather it in to the textured wall. We'll do that, and then we'll let that dry for a few minutes and then put the texture on. Okay, now we're ready to texture, so you're going to want to get out your can of spray texture. Now we know this is a fairly heavy knockdown, so we're going to want to open up this one all the way so the maximum amount of the texture will come out. You can practice, this will do a fairly large area, about 30 square feet. So you can practice on, take a piece of cardboard and spray a little on the cardboard first and kind of match the texture that you're trying to go for on your wall. So with that said too, I like to warm these up a little bit too. So if they're kind of cold, soak them in some warm water for a while to get the temperature up to about 80 degrees, and make sure you shake them a lot because there's a little ball in there. You want to make sure you mix it up really good so you get a nice even texture. So we're all done shaking it up, and we're ready to put the texture on. So we're going to hold it about 12 inches away, and we're going to start texturing it. Now you want to go outside of where you patched. You don't want to go too heavy at first. You kind of want to go back and forth. You don't want to have big, huge clumps of it anywhere. And we've got it sprayed on there. And it's going to have to dry for about 15 or 20 minutes. You don't want it all the way dry, but then we're going to come back through and we're going to knock this down to give it kind of that flat finish on it. Okay, now it's dried enough. It's dried a little bit. You don't want to let it over dry because it's going to be real hard to knock it down. Once it's dry enough, you can touch a small area. And what we're going to do is we're going to knock down the finish, which is going to give it that flat finish. Okay, and then we're going to let that dry completely, and then we're going to give it a real light sanding, and then it's going to be ready for paint. Okay, now that it's completely dry, we're going to do one final step, and that's a really, really light sanding. You're basically just going to knock down any little burrs or anything that's on it. So you're just going to stroke it. That's it, just a very light sanding. Just knock off any little pieces, loose pieces on there. Now it's ready to paint. Before you paint it the actual color of the wall, you want to put primer on the new stuff, because with the wet paint, once this gets wet, it'll start to pull off a little bit. So put a little coat of primer on it. Once that dries, then paint it the wall color. You're all done. Nobody will ever know that there was a hole here. And the way we did it's going to be very strong too, so if the door hits into it again, it's probably not going to put a hole back into it. Congratulations on a job well done.